Jiro is a miserable loser like you who can't get a girlfriend outside his dreams. However, everything changes when he's forced into a fake marriage with the girl he hates in his class, but ends up rizzing her up and clapping her. It all starts at Jiro's special school, where male and female students will be paired to live together as mock couples for a marriage practical. However, Jiro has no interest in the practical as he prefers to goon to his 3D girlfriend with his friend Kamo. Just then, the most popular girl in school, Akari, tells the losers to get out of her way as she passes by. Kamo starts drooling over how hot she is, but Jiro hates her guts because she's mean to social outcasts like them. However, Akari suddenly does a 180 and becomes nice when she sees Tenji, the cutest boy in school, passing by. As Akari stops to flirt with Tenji, Jiro realizes that Akari is acting cute because she hopes to get paired with Tenji for the marriage practical. Later in class, Jiro gets nervous about the couple selection when his crush, Shiori, notices and helps him relax. Jiro then realizes she's the only girl he can talk to without wetting his pants and hopes he gets paired with her. After this, the teacher explains that the assigned couples will be living together and stacking up points for getting along, but she warns that the dorms are rigged with cameras to avoid the students getting freaky. Hearing this, Jiro starts to daydream about what it would be like being paired with Shiori. However, thanks to his bad luck, he gets stuck with the girl from his nightmares, Akari. Akari immediately threatens to flay him for infecting her with his bad luck, but Jiro says it's not his fault since he also prefers someone else. Akari quickly figures out that Jiro has a crush on Shiori but mocks him for thinking he'd ever have a chance with her. Suddenly, the points on the screen drop to -3, causing Akari to freak out. She reveals that the only way they both get to be with their crushes is if they pretend to get along and get A rank, which will allow them to change their partners. Surprised, Jiro asks if that's possible, so Akari hands him the manual, where he learns that they could change partners if they attain A rank by the end of the month. Akari then suggests that they do their best, but the thought of acting sweet with a hottie terrifies Jiro. Sensing this, Akari clings to him and whispers some sweet nonsense in his ears, making him freak out. Since this improves their score, Akari suggests they continue. But before she starts dancing on his disco stick, Jiro pushes her off and rushes out. Outside, Jiro spots Shiori getting cozy with her assigned partner, Tenji, leaving him devastated because he's no match for his hot guy aura. Moments later, Jiro is back home with Akari watching him mourn the impending loss of his crush. Afterwards, she consoles him with an impressive view of her racks and suggests that they aim for the A rank, but Jiro says that, unlike her, he's inexperienced. Suddenly, the doorbell goes off and Kamo shows up, asking Jiro to hang out with him. Quickly, Jiro prepares to leave, but Akari demands that he give her a goodbye kiss so their points can increase. Jiro initially freaks out, but when Akari starts mocking him for being a virgin wuss, he grabs her and plants a steamy kiss on her. He then heads off with Kamo, blushing like a fool, while Akari remains at home with her floodgates unlocked. A week later, Jiro arrives early at school when he notices Shiori and Tenjin strolling in like Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. But before he smashes his head into a wall, his teacher walks in and tells him to visit the faculty office with Akari later in the day. When Jiro looks back out the window, he sees Shiori clinging to Tenji, and the sight ruins his mood for the rest of the day. So in class, Jiro acts depressed, hoping that Shiori will notice him, but she totally ignores his existence. After school, it starts to rain, but Jiro refuses to share an umbrella with Kamo, so he doesn't feel like a sausage lover. Just then, Akari shows up and announces that she's ditching Jiro's sorry cheeks to do karaoke with Tenjin. As she stands to leave, Jiro tells her they've got to meet with the teacher, but Akari tells him to go alone and runs off. Jiro starts to feel bad because no one needs him, even though Kamo assures him he's living the dream harem life. Later, at the faculty office, the teacher shows Jiro his poor grades on the marriage practical and suggests that he and Akari start getting along, as passing the course is necessary for graduation. However, Jiro knows it's probably a lost cause. Shortly after, Jiro sits outside thinking about his wife getting ran through at the karaoke when Shiori shows up and sits with him. While they talk, Shiori suddenly clings to him, thinking she saw a bug, making Jiro realize that the same thing must have happened with Tenjin that morning. Shiori then tells Jiro that she'd like him to call her by her first name, making him blush, but before he can say the words, Tenjin shows up to get Shiori, ruining the mood. After, Jiro is left alone and sad yet again until Akari shows up with her umbrella. On their way home, she laments that she could have shared the umbrella with Tenjin if Jiro had snuck off to the school's hotspot to pound Shiori, but encourages Jiro not to give up for both their sakes. Later at the dorm, Akari serves the dinner she prepared, surprising Jiro, who thought she was only good for the bedroom. After taking his first bite, Jiro realizes it's good, so he tries to feed her some, but they end up with their lips inches apart. However, Jiro's phone suddenly rings and disrupts the moment. The next day, Jiro has one of his spicy dreams, but just as things are about to get exciting, he hears someone calling him and wakes. He then opens his door and finds Akari, who then asks him to stay with her for the night. Shortly after, they watch a horror movie together, and when things get scary, Akari screams her lungs out. Jiro then asks why they're watching the movie, so Akari explains that her friends told her it's the best way to get lots of points. Just then, Jiro turns off the movie and says it won't work, but Akari insists insists they can rake in more points by overcoming their fears together. She then asks if he still wants to be paired with Shiori. When Jiro says he does, she brings out a matching pair of pajamas and suggests they wear them to make their Netflix and chill effective. Shocked by this, Jiro wonders why she's been fired up since she went to the karaoke and figures that Tenjin must have used his magic wand on her. While Jiro convinces himself that he's unbothered, Akari tells him to turn around for her to change. Hearing this, Jiro freaks out and turns before his eyes explode from indecent exposure. Just when Jiro undresses to put on his pajamas too, the lights go out, so he looks around in the dark but suddenly feels Akari jump on him. This throws Jiro's brain into overdrive, and while their score on the board increases, Jiro then realizes that Akari must be scared. So he turns on his torch, but Akari covers his eyes and calls him a man of culture, while Jiro claims he didn't see enough to make him bust. Shortly after, Jiro checks their room doors and figures they can't be opened unless power is restored. So, Akari tells him to get back to her, surprising Jiro, who then wonders why she's so bossy and selfish. When he joins her on the couch, Akari cuddles up against him and tells him to say something fun. However, since Jiro's brain ghosts him on the spot, Akari says it's why he'll never get a girl. Hearing this, Jiro begins to narrate a scary story, but stops when he notices Akari has gone silent. So he asks if she's scared, and she fires back at him with insults while adding that, unlike him, Tenjin knows ball. Since she has no other option, she reaches for Jiro's hand on his thigh and asks if it's okay to depend on him for a while. Shocked, Jiro freaks out, thinking she was trying to grab his joystick. Just then, Akari finds an aromatherapy candle she got as a gift from her friend. A few moments later, they both watch the candle burn as it gives off a sweet scent in the room. Like magic, Akari gives Jiro a green light look, so he hugs her and tells her she's cute. When Jiro suddenly regains his senses, he freaks out, but calms down when he realizes she's asleep. He then comments that she looks cute when sleeping and holds her hand before falling asleep beside her. Unknown to him, Akari heard him, so she wonders what he meant by all that. The next day, Jiro finds out on the results board that he and Akari got a B rank. While Kamo hypes him about this, Akari shows up and exclaims when she notices that Tenjin and Shiori got an E. Although Jiro doesn't want Shiori and Tenjin getting along, he worries about Shiori, since his efforts will be a waste if she fails. While washing his bathtub and thinking about this, he slips and falls into the bathtub. Sometime later in the music room, Mei, Shiori's friend, asks Shiori if she's bothered by Jiro's cold or her failing marriage. In response, Shiori blames her poor social skills for the failing marriage. Meanwhile, in Jiro's dorm, he battles with a cold and suddenly gets a text from Akari telling him to let her in when she rings the intercom. He then wonders if Shiori would stay home with him if he were paired with her. Just then, the intercom rings, so he gets to the door, but is surprised to find Shiori, who then asks how he's feeling. In a restaurant at school, Akari hangs out with her friends, but they notice her spacing out, so they ask if she's thinking about Tenjin. So Shiori ignores the question and suggests they eat their food. While her friends comment on the soft texture of the food, Shiori suddenly flashes back to the moment Jiro kissed her and shakes the thought off her head. Surprised, her friends ask if she's having flashbacks from the karaoke night, but Akari tells them nothing happened and wonders why Jiro popped up in her mind. Back at the dorm, Jiro thanks Shiori for showing up, and Shiori reveals that she came at Akari's request. Hearing this, Jiro silently thanks Akari for the impeccable assist, while Shiori reminds him of how he once visited her when she was sick and looked after her. To repay this, Shiori places a patch on his forehead and suits up to cook him a meal. Just then, Shiori arrives with a bowl of food, exciting Jiro, who then grabs the bowl and empties it immediately. However, while he screams about how delicious it tastes, he blames himself for ruining his chances of being fed by Shiori. Afterwards, Jiro comments on how Tenjin is lucky to always enjoy her cooking, but Shiori reveals that they take turns in cooking. Shocked, Jiro states that Akari does all the cooking since he can't cook, and this prompts Shiori to ask if they're getting along. Jiro then reveals that he saw her results and tells her to ask if she needs his help. However, Shiori thanks him and explains that she feels uncomfortable around boys and gets anxious when she thinks about marriage. In addition, Shiori reveals that she would have preferred Jiro as her husband, shocking him, but she says it's a joke. Quickly, Jiro grabs her and encourages her to be confident, but he suddenly chickens out and hides under his blanket. While Shiori does the dishes, Jiro concludes that she only came because Akari asked her to and imagines things working out between her and Tenjin soon. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Shiori's friends say there are rumors that Shiori is avoiding Tenjin. While they wonder if she and Tenjin are breaking beds, they ask Akari what she'll do before Shiori steals her man with her magical cookie. At the dorm, when Jiro falls asleep, Shiori leans in to steal a kiss but stops, thinking it's wrong since they're not married. She then remembers a promise she and Jiro made in the past to remain friends when she prepares to move away with her family. Back then, before she confessed her feelings, Jiro had to leave, so she hopes he listens to her this time. Later, Akari returns, and while she takes a shower, Jiro stands at the door to talk to her. He then promises to help her get together with Tenjin. Meanwhile, Akari wonders why she's annoyed by this. Sometime later, Akari serves Shiori his meal and asks him if guys prefer family-oriented ladies like Shiori to downright baddies like her. Surprised, Jiro asks why she's curious, but Akari keeps pressing for answers. Jiro then says that guys like ladies who make them home-cooked lunch. When he says no one would expect a homemade meal from someone like her, Akari pinches his cheek and says it'll work if he helps her. In the following days, Jiro plays the sidekick in Akari's cookathon quest, and while she makes a variety of dishes, he gets to taste them and give reviews. However, when Jiro says he prefers his omelet sweet, Akari says that Tenjin is more mature compared to him and would have better taste. Meanwhile, doing all these together keeps increasing their score. During lunch break, Jiro shares his lunch with Kamo, who then comments that he's blessed with a baddie who cooks and cleans. When he questions the gods for being cruel to him, Jiro points out that his marriage is doing fine. However, Kamo disagrees, saying his marriage is on life support. While he explains that he's basically roommates with his partner, Jiro tells him to look on the bright side. Annoyed, Kamo gives Jiro the side eye and says their marriages are nothing alike. He then tells Jiro to allow Akari swipe his V card, but when Jiro tells him to stop corrupting his good manners, Kamo throws a tantrum and asks Jiro how it feels living with a baddie. So Jiro explains that because Akari dresses like a he deserves a Nobel Prize for keeping his sausage where it belongs. Just then, Akari shows up and hears her name, so she asks what they're talking about, but Jiro quickly diverts. She then asks for reviews on her packed lunchbox, but when Jiro gives his honest reviews, she tells him to shove his preferences up his hole. While they go back and forth, Kamo laments about watching the lovers squabble. The next morning, Jiro wakes up to the aroma of good food and spots Akari packing up a lunchbox. Akari then states that it's for Tenjin, but when Jiro says he's hungry, she offers to feed him the last piece of rolled omelet, saying she's proud of her masterpiece. However, when Jiro tastes it, he realizes it tastes the same. While their points increase, Jiro thinks about his mock wife making lunch for some other dude and feels less of a man. When Akari is all packed and ready, Jiro checks out her outfit and wonders how much time she spent looking good for Tenjin when she dresses like a homeless person when with him. As she prepares to leave, Akari requests a goodbye kiss, unlocking a new fear in Jiro. When he reminds her that she's going to see her crush, Akari says that his kiss made her feel safe the last time. Moved by this, Jiro leans in, but gets saved by the bell again. On getting to the door, he finds Shiori, who then apologizes for showing up with her two left legs. Just then, she whips out a pack of apple pies, saying she made too many. On checking it out, Akari comments on how delicious they look, and Shiori reveals that it was a request from Tenjin. However, when she adds that Tenjin has a sweet tooth, Jiro glances at Akari to say he was right, but stops when he notices she's unhappy. Seeing the packed lunch, Shiori asks if they're going on a picnic, but while Jiro scrambles for an answer, Akari comments that the apple pies look good. When Shiori leaves, Jiro feasts on the packed lunch, and just when he thanks Akari for the food, he notices her sulking. So he sits with her and tries to cheer her up, but Akari says she's out of ideas on how to get Tenjin. Surprised to see her discouraged, Jiro points out that she's a 10 since every guy in school wants to slide down her rabbit hole. When he realizes how that must sound to her, he apologizes. Just then, Akari asks if he also thinks she's hot, making Jiro think of her in a steamy situation. But when he says that he has never thought about her like that before, Akari calls him a liar and crawls over him. While she stares deep into his soul, she sits on his magnum and asks if he's been having X-rated thoughts of her. Dumbfounded, Jiro gets fixated on her plushies and stutters, so Akari says she'll grant his wish and is about to take off her clothes. Jiro then stops her and tells her that they can't, since she has Tenjin. In response, Akari points out that he has Shiori, too, and suggests they stop pretending to be a couple. Afterwards, things go sour between them, and their scores took a plunge. At the end of the month, the students check their results, but while Tenjin gets excited about making the A rank, Shiori feels sad because Jiro and Akari are now on E rank. Shortly after, Kamo meets Jiro in the restroom and asks why he's flunking his grades. In response, Jiro tells him to ignore it and flashes back to the night he rejected Akari. He had thought she was just teasing him until he noticed her hands were cold and trembling. At that point, he figures she must be new to the game, too. Knowing this makes Jiro sad, so they step out of the restroom and bump into Shiori, who then requests to talk to Jiro alone. Afterwards, they arrive at the school rooftop, and Shiori asks Jiro if something happened between him and Akari. When Jiro admits that they had a fight and Akari is giving him the silent treatment, Shiori encourages him to square things up with her. On getting back to the dorm, Jiro finds his food with instructions on how to microwave it and realizes that their score is back to 0, so he knocks on Akari's door, saying he wants to talk. Shortly after, Akari opens up and invites him in, but while he scans the room, Akari lies on her bed and ignores his presence. Jiro then apologizes to her, but she says he did nothing wrong and tells him to forget about it. Despite this, Jiro goes on explaining that he only stopped her because he thinks she deserves the girlfriend treatment. Annoyed, Akari tells him to shut up, but Jiro says he hates the silent treatment and would like them to be a couple again. However, However, when he realizes how that sounds, he freaks out, making Akari laugh at him. Suddenly, Jiro gets pissed off by this, but she pulls him closer and says she likes him. When she asks if he likes her too, Jiro leans in for a kiss, but Akari blocks him with his hands to make him feel the pain of rejection too. The next day at the basketball pitch, Akari is amazed to find out that her friend, Sachi, is a B rank. When Sachi says her partner takes the practical seriously, Natsumi, the other friend, points out that her partner must be hitting the right spots. Sachi then debunks this and explains that they both have partners they're hoping to swap with. Just then, Natsumi throws a tantrum, saying she'd be depressed if her partner attends her school, since she can't bear seeing him live with another girl. While they chat and giggle, the coach shows up, telling them to shut them up and watch the game. Meanwhile, Kamo notices Jiro staring at Shiori, but when he comments on it, Tenjin suddenly scores. When Jiro spots every lady cheering for Tenjin, he gets gloomy, so Kamo asks if he's heard the rumors about Shiori. On the other side of the court, Akari's friends say there are rumors that Shiori won't be swapping partners. When Natsumi asks if everyone who gets the A rank swaps partners, Sachi confirms this and adds that they get to keep their points from the previous pairing. When her friends guess that something romantic might start happening between Tenji and Shiori, Akari says it's too early to decide that. While they tease each other, the coach screams at them again. Meanwhile, Kamo tells Jiro not to be worked up by the rumors, since Shiori is better off with Tenjin. Pissed off, Jiro asks whose side he's on, and Kamo says he's always a supporter of women. Afterwards, Jiro leaves the court, and Shiori runs up to meet him. Then she notices his mood and asks if it's because of the practical. Before he responds, she asks if he's had another fight with Akari, but Jiro says they're cool. So, Shiori smiles, relieved, and tells him not to cause too much trouble for Akari. Meanwhile, Jiro wonders how she'd feel if she knew she was the reason for his foul mood, so he asks if she plans to stay with Tenjin forever. In the storeroom, Akari laments about being the only one punished for making noise, but the moment Tenjin shows up in the room, she lights up and mistakenly hits the shelf behind her. Suddenly, a box topples over Akari, but Tenjin bends her over a table to save her. After thanking him, she asks what he's doing there, and Tenjin says he's returning the balls. She then feels her heart racing and gets excited to know he still makes her feel like that. As Tenjin turns to leave, Akari remembers her friend's comments, so she asks Tenjin if he'll stay with Shiori forever. Tenjin then responds, saying he might if Shiori agrees to it. Hearing this, Shiori tears up and suddenly realizes she loves him, but Tenjin sees her crying and asks if she's alright. In response, Akari says that something got into her eyes, so he holds her chin and looks into her eyes. Meanwhile, Kamo goes around looking for Jiro, but when he finds the store door open, he checks it out and sees Tenjin and Akari getting cozy in the room. Outside the building, Shiori says that she can't make the decision to switch partners alone, so Jiro apologizes for asking a dumb question. However, before she leaves, she hints that she might switch if he makes it to A rank, so Jiro stops her to promise that he'll make the A rank. Just then, Kamo shows up, moving like an idiot, so Jiro grabs him and vows to dismantle his face if he doesn't vanish immediately. When Shiori tells him to chill out, Jiro apologizes while Kamo asks if they're having a steamy session too. Surprised, Jiro asks what he means, and Kamo reveals that he saw Tenjin and Akari, but before he spills, Tenji and Akari show up, asking what they're up to. After this, Tenjin hands over the key to the store to Kamo as requested by the teacher and pauses to ask Shiori if she submitted the form to continue the marriage practical together. In response, Shiori says she hasn't, and since Tenjin forgot to, they both agree to go submit it together. After they leave, Kamo leaves too, but as Jiro approaches Akari to talk, she walks off, suggesting they head to class. Later in class, Jiro overhears Akari's friends saying that she went home, so he takes out his game to keep playing, but notices Kamo loitering around him. So he asks Kamo what he wants, and Kamo reveals that he saw Tenjin kissing Akari. When he adds that it made Akari embarrassed, Jiro faces his game and says it has nothing to do with him. However, when Kamo leaves, Jiro glances at Tenjin and feels happy for Akari. On getting home, he finds Akari lying on the couch and asks if she's alright, but since she ignores him, he sits next to her and apologizes for not being Tenjin. Surprised, Akari asks why he's bringing Tenjin up, so Jiro says he's happy for her since she's gotten closer to Tenjin. In response, Akari says she's happy she got to talk to him, but Jiro asks if that's why she kissed him. Surprised, Akari says she has no idea what he means, but Jiro tells her to quit pretending when they made out in the storeroom. He then adds that it's a cause for celebration, and when Akari notices his mood, she laughs and reveals that he must have seen them when Tenjin checked her eye for dust. Hearing this, Jiro vows to end Kamo for good, while Akari reveals that she's hurt to find out that Tenjin won't be changing partners. When she asks Jiro why he thinks they kissed, Jiro says he knows how hard she's trying. Suddenly, Akari tears up, so Jiro hugs her to console her. Later that night, while Jiro wonders what what got into him. Akari steps out of the shower wearing his shirt. Shocked, he freaks out, but Akari ignores this and sits close to him on the couch. While she shows him what she could do with her mouth, Jiro tells her to be careful around him, since his magnum isn't as dormant as she thinks. Hearing this, Akari leans in closer and states that his heart is racing. Quickly, Jiro calms himself down and tells Akari to dress the way she does for Tenjin. In response, Akari asks Jiro if he's jealous, but Jiro says he's just worried she might catch a cold. After this, Akari states that she's not as easy as he thinks and adds that he must think she goes around kissing people. So, Jiro tries to apologize, but Akari grabs his lips and says he's the only person she's ever kissed. On hearing this, Jiro's spirit leaves his body while Akari tries to bring him back to his senses. The next day, while Jiro and Akari prepare for school, he grabs the trash while she adjusts his tie like a true wife. Surprised by this, Jiro thinks about how lucky he is to have a baddie as his mock wife. Just then, Akari thinks he was staring at her melons and tries to unalive him with the tie. Later at school, Jiro arrives at a class for class duties and finds Shiori cleaning the board. Surprised, he points out that he was supposed to be working with Mei, but Shiori says she's filling in for Mei. Meanwhile, Shiori flashes back to when she swapped duties with Mei. Mei had asked why she won't just tell Jiro how she feels, but Shiori said that Jiro doesn't think of her that way. However, Mei disagreed and stated that Jiro is obviously in love with her since she has never seen him talking to any other girl. When Shiori commented that it was true until the marriage practical started, Mei suggested she kiss him during class duty and hypes her up for the mission. Somewhere else, Akari and her friends talk about circulating rumors, and Sachi reveals that 10 out of the mock couples are now real couples. Hearing this, Akari says they're all just caught up in the moment, but on opening her eyes, she finds her friends giving her a sus look. Just then, Sachi points out that Akari has been staring at Jiro a lot, while Natsumi says that although she's rooting for them, she might have a hard time with Jiro. Suddenly, Akari listens to her friends advertise Jiro to her, but she quickly states that Tenjin is the best man for her. Back in class, Jiro helps Shiori with some heavy books, and she apologizes for stressing him. Shortly after, while they clean the board, Shiori tries to initiate a conversation, but Jiro's conversational skills suck, so he stands there like a fool, scrambling for what to say. Meanwhile, Akari heads to the class, wondering why Jiro hasn't read her message, but when she arrives, she sees him and Shiori, so she leaves. In the class, Shiori eyes Jiro like he's the last cookie in a jar, and when he looks back at her, Shiori tells him to close his eyes and lean down. Thinking his dreams are finally coming through, Jiro leans down, hoping to be met with Shiori's lips, but Shiori merely brushes some chalk dust off his face. She then heads off to clean the dusters, and Jiro realizes the entire day has been a waste, while Shiori quietly apologizes to Mei for failing on the mission. Later that day, while Jiro blames himself for lacking game, Akari shows up with 2 cups of tea and asks why he's being moody. She then hands him a cup of tea, but Jiro denies this, so Akari asks how things went with Shiori. In response, he says it went well, but Akari says he's lying, annoying him. After this, she says things would be better if she were with Tenjin, but Jiro responds, saying she's stuck with him. A few moments later, Akari tells Jiro to call her by her first name, but this shocks Jiro, and he almost chokes on his drink. When he says he can't, Akari says it's unfair since he calls Shiori by her first name. Jiro then explains that it's different with Shiori, but Akari mocks him for this. Afterwards, she explains that hearing him call her by her first name whenever she loses her confidence will make her feel better. So, Jiro calls her by her first name and comments on how much her name suits her. Just then, he realizes how cringeworthy that sounds and suggests they pretend it never happened. However, Akari grabs his shirt and tells him to say her name again, but since Jiro freezes on the spot, Akari says it's unfair that she's the only one using his first name. Suddenly, she says it makes her feel like she's the only one in love, surprising Jiro. So, she says she was referring to the practical, while Jiro apologizes for jumping to conclusions. While he explains that he's never had anyone say such a thing to him, Akari suddenly vanishes. Jiro then tries to convince himself that she's still hooked on Tenjin. Meanwhile, Akari feels confused in the dorm and wonders what to do. The next day in class, the teacher announces that since the start of the marriage practical, the students are distracted, so she states that they'll be having special tests, and whoever fails will take extra lessons. Hearing this makes Jiro freak out, and while Akari gets busy with her phone, the teacher explains that the mock couples will write the tests together and take the lessons together if they fail. On hearing this, Jiro dreads what will happen if he fails and wonders if Akari is as smart as she looks. After class, Akari tells him to get a fabric softener on his way home, so Jiro tries to bring up the test, but Akari says she's off to the karaoke with some boys. She then asks if he's jealous, but Jiro asks if she's ready for the tests, and she assures him that things will work out somehow. Jiro then suggests they head back home while stating that the extra lessons punishment will only push her away from Tenjin. Somewhere else, Shiori tutors Mei in preparations for the tests, so Mei thanks her and comments that, unlike sports, where she's confident, she struggles with academics. To thank her, Mei offers to teach her how to kiss. Shiori then freaks out and turns red, while Mei reminds her of her class duty with Jiro. Meanwhile, At the dorm, Akari screams, saying her brain is about to explode, but when Jiro keeps trying to make her study, he says he's only stressing her out because of Shiori. Suddenly, she leans on him and suggests they do something fun. However, Jiro refuses to fall for this, so he resumes his tutorial session. Later, when they're done, Akari thanks Jiro, and after teasing him, she comments on how much it sucks that Jiro is smarter than she is. Just when Jiro explains that they're a team, Akari sits between his legs and leans on him. While she terrorizes him with her nuclear warheads, Jiro resists until he can't take it anymore. So he flips her like a pancake and stares at Akari like he's about to devour her cookie. Shocked, Akari tells him to back off, but Jiro touches her cheeks as she makes happy sounds. Suddenly, Akari gives in to the temptation, but notices Jiro bleeding through his nose. Moments later, Akari mocks Jiro about this and says he was worked up because he's trying so hard to get Shiori. In response, Jiro says he's helping her get what she wants too, by helping her out with her academics. Just then, Akari realizes how much things would change if they got the A rank. The next day, Jiro notices that Akari stopped calling him by his first name, but she doesn't seem angry. While they both prepare for school, Jiro wonders what's going on, but Akari acts normally and suggests they eat some chocolates she got later at night. During break at school, he starts searching the net for clues on his marriage problem, so Kamo busts him in the act and is surprised to see his friend seeking crowdsourced knowledge for his marriage. Shortly after, Jiro asks Kamo if he argues with his partner, and Kamo explains how he got the silent treatment recently and lands in trouble for asking if it was her time of the month. While Kamo wishes women would communicate more, Jiro gets a text from Akari asking him for his shampoo preference. Just then, they spot Mei breaking a girl's heart nearby and hide to see what's going on, so they watch Mei trying to console her heartbroken admirer. Later that day, Jiro thinks about his situation with Akari and recalls the night when she asked him to call her by her first name, but he convinces himself that he's just overthinking things. At home, Jiro undresses and wonders if calling her by her first name would restore things to normal. Suddenly, Akari barges in on him, making Jiro freak out. She then shows him that they came 8th on the result list and hugs him, feeling excited, but Jiro tells her to let him shower. Afterwards, Akari helps Jiro dry his hair and comments on the smell of his new shampoo. Meanwhile, Jiro realizes she's seriously not calling him by his first name anymore, so he calls her by her first name. On hearing this, Akari gets emotional and calls him by his first name before asking if he wants something. Just then, he realizes she wants him to call her by her first name, so he keeps calling Herbie her first name while she blushes. Just then, Akari uses her blower on him while he tells her not to be embarrassed. So, Akari moves closer to him and says she prefers him calling her by her first name and adds that they only have a little time left to play couple. Somewhere else, in the locker room, Mei checks the list on her phone and notices Akari and Jiro moving up in the ranks, so she meets up with Shiori and advises her to do something, or she'll lose Jiro. While Shiori wonders what's happening, Mei reminds her how they didn't make any progress during the class duty and states that she'll have to outdo Akari to get Jiro. Hearing this, Shiori says it's not easy, but Mei points out that they might have kissed and could be doing more. When Shiori gets anxious about this, Mei says he'll help set things up for her. A few moments later, Mei informs Jiro that Shiori collapsed and suggests that he check on her in the nurse's office. When Jiro wonders why she's telling him that, Mei asks if he's embarrassed to admit he's into her and hands him a drink to deliver to her. Meanwhile, at the nurse's office, Shiori puts on a little makeup, expecting Jiro to show up and psych herself up for the mission. When Jiro arrives, Shiori gets excited and apologizes for making him worry. Jiro delivers the drink and sandwich for Mei, but finds another sitting on the desk beside her, so he figures Tenjin must have brought them. After this, Shiori points out that things must be going well between him and Akari, since they made the 8th position, but Jiro says they still argue all the time. Surprisingly, Shiori says she'd like to argue with him too, and adds that she has never seen him angry. In addition, Shiori says she is anxious because she's still nervous around boys, while other girls around her are more mature. Hearing this, Jiro asks if she and Tenjin have been doing anything interesting. However, Shiori says they haven't, and adds that even if she tries a kiss with someone she loves, she'd creep them out with her lack of skills. In response, Jiro says he'd be happy if it were him, so Shiori asks him to practice with her. Jiro then asks why she's asking him when she's married, but Shiori says he's the only person she could ask. So, Jiro says he doesn't mind, but warns her that he's a learner too. So he grabs her and leans in for the kiss. However, Shiori stops him at the last minute, saying it's not right. Meanwhile, Sachi walks into the office, hoping to take a nap, but spots a guy and a lady going at it, so she leaves. Turns out, Jiro and Shiori eventually went through with their kissing rehearsal. While they kiss on the clinic bed, Jiro suddenly regains his senses and breaks away from her, claiming it's an accident before he leaves. Somewhere else, Akari double texts Jiro and wonders why he isn't replying, and just then, Sachi shows up and reveals that she saw a guy and a girl making a bed creak at the clinic. While Akari freaks out on hearing this, she gets a reply from Jiro, who then says he was at the clinic to see Shiori. Later that day, Jiro finds the chocolates in the fridge and wonders why Akari isn't home yet. At the time, Akari sits at a coffee shop and reads messages from her friends, who can tell she's feeling down. Just then, the manager tells Mikun, Tenjin's brother, to process Akari's order and add a little extra because she looks down. After tasting the drink, she exclaims about how sweet it tastes and notices a note written on the cup to cheer her up. So he returns home and waits at the door, thinking if Jiro really got with Shiori. She then walks in, hoping to find a different Jiro, but upon entering, she finds that he has fallen asleep while waiting for her. To find out if he's pretending, she undresses and cuddles him while wondering if he allowed someone else swipe his V card. In the morning, Jiro freaks out when he finds Akari sleeping next to him, and when she tries to greet him, he rushes off the couch. When he points out that her assets are on full display, Akari covers herself and states that he took off her clothes the previous night. Hearing this, Jiro freezes and listens to Akari diss him for forgetting all he did for her over the night. Suddenly, he grabs her, freaking out about losing his V card and having no memory of it. Curious, Akari asks if it's his first and threatens to starve him to death if he lies to her. So, Jiro says it's his first time and apologizes for burdening her with the stress of swiping a V card. Just then, Akari reveals she was lying and laughs while he crashes out. When she asks why he looks disappointed, Jiro says it hurts to know he's still a virgin. So Akari twists his ears and says she'd never do that when she knows he's hooked on Shiori. Later at school, Jiro hangs out with Kamo on the school rooftop, and Kamo asks if something happened between him and Akari, since he's been spending a lot of time on the roof lately. In response, Jiro says that nothing special happened, but flashes back to a memory of Akari's melons. Somewhere else, Shiori does class duty and thinks of a way to dispose of some trash. Just then, Sachi and Natsumi show up and offer to help her while wondering how she got the job dumped on her. Luckily, Jiro and Kamo stroll by, so the ladies call them to come over, but the idiots argue about who they're referring to. Sachi then says she's referring to them both and asks them if Shiori needs their help. While Kamo gets excited about helping the ladies, Jiro strolls behind him since things are awkward between him and Shiori. After this, Sachi suggests that they pair up to take out the trash, so she pairs Jiro up with Shiori. However, Shiori says she'd rather carry the trash with Sachi, leaving Jiro devastated. On noticing his reaction, Kamo tells Jiro to use the toilet at the gym if he wants to cry. Sachi then points out that no one would like to pair up with a loser anyway, but she notices Shiori looking emotional. Later, while Akari hangs out with her friends, Sachi and Natsumi say they've got something to tell her, but since no one wants to go first, they play rock, paper, scissors to decide. So, Sachi goes first and asks Akari how she truly feels about Jiro, but when Akari begins to stutter, Sachi says it hurts to see her confused. Just then, Natsumi asks how she feels about Tenjin and points out that she doesn't swoon about Tenjin as she did before. In response, Akari says that things are getting good with Tenjin's marriage, and she won't like to be a home wrecker. Sachin then says she's not ruining things, since everyone is just trying to look good for the practical. In addition, they tell her not to get lost in the mood, since Jiro would act the same if he were with any other lady. While she thinks about this, her friends hug her to cheer her up. After they part ways, Natsumi asks Sachi if Jiro and Shiori are dating, but she says she doesn't know and adds that something likely happened between them. Natsumi then asks what they'll do if Akari chooses Jiro eventually, and Sachi says it's fine as long as she's clear about what she wants. While they wonder if there's a way to help Akari make her decision, they find a fireworks festival poster and figure it's the perfect chance to help Akari. On the day of the festival, Akari makes Jiro dress her up in her yukata, and while he wonders why she's doing too much for the festival, Akari says that Tenjin will be there. Unimpressed, Jiro says it's not like she's attending the festival with Tenjin, but Akari says she can't be caught unprepared. Jiro then wonders if Akari sees him as a man, since she doesn't worry that much about her looks when with him. After this, she shows him a kind of knot she wants him to tie for her outfit. However, Jiro suggests she try a ribbon bow style, but she says it's childish. She then says that, unlike him, Tenjin likes mature styles and tells him to get on with it. After this, she adds that he can watch the fireworks from the veranda all alone while she and Tenjin have a nice time together. However, while Jiro ties the knot, she blushes and gets emotional. Later at the festival, Akari's friends hype her up and compliment her looks in her dress. Sachin then states that Tenjin and the other guys will show up soon. Natsumi then chips in that they've laid the groundwork with the other guys, except Tenjin. Annoyed, Akari says it's embarrassing that they told everyone, but they tell her everyone in the world knows how she swoons over Tenjin. After this, they tell her to try to get close to Tenjin and encourage her to be confident, but Akari feels guilty meeting with Tenjin in an outfit Jiro dressed her in. After wondering if she'll be able to continue with Jiro with her feelings for Tenjin, she promises to do her best. Just then, the guys show up without Tenjin, and when the ladies ask about him, the guys apologize, saying Tenjin got called in at work because the festival brought in a lot of customers. Disappointed, Sachi says the festival is pointless without Tenjin and states that they won't be getting any cookies as promised. When one of the boys asks how they could make it up to Akari, Sachi tells them to get some candied apples. After Akari thanks her friends for trying, the ladies head off to get something for themselves, leaving Akari thinking about how much effort she put into looking good for Tenjin. She then wonders why she feels relieved that Tenjin won't be showing up and thinks of how scared she is chasing guys who don't put her first. However, she snaps out of it and decides to visit Tenjin's workplace, but her attention gets drawn to a couple that everyone is talking about. Shocked to find out it's Tenjin and Shiori, Akari freezes on the spot till her friends return with cakes. When they point out that she looks pale, Akari says she's just tired, so her friends suggest that she head back home. Back at the dorm, Jiro thinks about Akari's comment about having fun with Tenjin and figures he'll soon be tossed in the friend zone after the marriage practical. Just then, Jiro gets a call from Akari, and when he picks up, she starts crying over the phone. Quickly, Jiro panics, asking where she is as he rushes to go find her. To his surprise, he finds her crying at the doorstep and lets her cry in his arms. A few moments later, they watch the fireworks from the veranda, and Akari says she's glad she wore the yukata. Jiro then says it must be hard to breathe in the outfit and tells her to take it off, but she says he's trying to see what's beneath her dress. After this, she asks Jiro what he thinks about her dress, and Jiro says she would have looked better with a different knot. So she puts his hand on her waist and asks him to redo her knot. However, he likes it, shocking Jiro, since he's holding a girl's waist for the first time. Jiro then tries to fix the knot, but gets confused, so Akari decides to check her phone for guidelines, but she drops it by mistake. Luckily, Jiro catches the phone and holds her close. Just then, Akari tells him to say her name to help her regain her confidence. While he keeps saying her name repeatedly, they get startled by the fireworks and comment on how beautiful it looks. Just then, Akari thanks Jiro for not asking about what happened at the festival. Meanwhile, in her dorm room, Shiori thinks about her kiss with Jiro and wonders how much longer they'll keep avoiding each other. At the same time, Jiro soaks in the bath, thinking about the fireworks festival and wondering why Akari is still determined to switch partners if she cried that much. Suddenly, Akari barges into the bath, screaming, so Jiro quickly stands up, freely dangling his berries in her face. He then covers up with his hands and asks her what happened. In response, Akari says a spider got in, so he screams at her for barging in on him because of that. However, Akari says no one cares about his micro-sausage, damaging what's left of his ego. She then drags him along to get rid of the spider, and shortly after, Jiro asks where the spider is. On looking around, Akari says it's gone and reveals that she can't stand spiders. Jiro then notices her balloons squeezing against his arms. But since Akari won't let him go, he realizes how cute she looks when scared. Some moments later, Jiro asks how much longer he has to sit with her, and she says until he catches the spider. Just when Jiro says she can always call him and he'll come running, Akari asks him to accompany her to the restroom, so Jiro sits at the door, trying not to imagine what's going on in the restroom. When Akari steps out, apologizing for keeping him waiting, Jiro says he's going to take a leak too. Akari then sits at the door, feeling embarrassed for inviting a dude to go with her to the toilet. She then figures Jiro would never refuse any of her requests and gets excited that he's her partner because she'd rather die than ask Tenjin. Shortly after, Jiro watches her paint her nails, and Akari suddenly says she wants some of the ice cream he's having. Jiro then tells her to get some in the fridge, but she insists that she wants his cream. After this, Jiro tells her to get a spoon, but she says she's scared and adds that Jiro is trying to avoid an indirect kiss with her. Afterwards, Akari asks Jiro what would have happened if they had met somewhere else, and Jiro responds, saying they wouldn't have talked. Akari then says he's mean and adds that she would have loved to meet a version of him who's not her husband. When Jiro chips in that the other couples must be like that too, Akari points out that some of them are dating for real, so she suggests they try dating too, leaving Jiro shocked. But Akari says she was kidding, making Jiro wonder what he would have said if she were serious. Suddenly, Akari spots the spider on the curtain and freaks out while squeezing Jiro's hands between her melons and thighs. This increases Jiro's temperature immediately as Akari tries to get him out of fear. After Jiro gets rid of the spider, he asks Akari what she'd do if her real husband hates bugs, and she says she'll call him. While Jiro tries to keep his heart from racing, Akari bids him goodnight. Later that night, while Jiro snores, Akari stays awake, wishing she could reach him through the wall. Meanwhile, Shiori stands at the veranda of her dorm when Tenjin shows up, asking what she's thinking about. He then offers to play the therapist, so they go inside, where Shiori narrates her situation with Jiro, pretending it's her friend. When she states that her friend doesn't know how to feel after the kissing incident, she suddenly sees Tenjin spilling his drink all over himself while lost in the conversation, so she offers him a towel to dry himself. Afterwards, Tenjin advises her to go for what she wants and not wait till it's too late, like he did. Hearing this, Shiori thanks Tenjin and says she was glad she got paired with him. The next day at school, Shiori tries to help Mei pick an outfit for a date, but Mei won't stop talking about how good it'll look on Shiori. After a while, Mei tells Shiori to pick something she likes because she'll be the one who sees it on their next movie date. Surprised, Shiori says she now knows how her admirers feel, but Mei tells her to go hug Jiro and tell him that everything will be okay. Just then, Mei's partner, Terafune, shows up and notifies the ladies that he and Tenjin would be at the karaoke all night, so he suggests they both spend the night together at one of their dorms. While Terafune teases Mei about this, she flares up, but Shiori agrees to the arrangement. So Terafune leaves the ladies to decide what they'll do all night long and texts Tenjin, saying he's gotten the permission from his wife for a boys' night out. Later, Terafune and Tenjin meet Mikun's boss, drunk at the bar, and while he yaps about Mikun working for him, Tenjin reveals that he's Kamo's brother. Meanwhile, Shiori and Mei plan their sleepover, but when Shiori suggests that they sleep on the same bed, Mei says she'll sleep on the floor. Shiori then says they could use the sofa and sleep together after taking a shower. However, this makes Mei choke on her drink. After she says that she's fine, Shiori says she'd like to see old pictures of Mei, but Mei says she only has family pictures. When she asks Shiori if she has any old pictures, Shiori says she only has old pictures of her and Jiro. Suddenly, Mei checks her phone and says she has to cancel their plans to run an errand. Somewhere else, Jiro has dinner with Kamo, who then complains about seeing his face too often. When Jiro reminds Kami that he invited him, Kamo complains that his wife asked him to get his dinner elsewhere. Surprised, Jiro asks if they're cool, but Kamo throws a tantrum, wishing he could have a baddie like Jiro's and have an accidental kiss too. Meanwhile, Shiori heads home thinking about her kiss with Jiro, but she stops when she sees the word kiss on a sign. Coincidentally, the sign is in front of a restaurant where Kamo and Jiro are taking bromance too seriously, but she misses this and walks off. Quickly, Jiro knocks Kamo out with a punch and runs after Shiori to explain himself. When he catches up with her, Jiro says it's not what she thinks, confusing Shiori, who's surprised to see him. When he says it's an accident, Shiori assumes he's talking about their kiss and tells him it's fine. When Jiro blames Kamo for the situation, they both realize they're talking about different things. So, Jiro offers to help her with her load, and on their way, Shiori points out that they look like a couple. Just then, she brings up the kiss issue, and when Jiro apologizes, she tells him that she asked him to teach her because she wanted it. Suddenly, their lips drew closer again, but Shiori snapped out of it this time and said the weather is getting cold. At the end of the term, the teacher tells the students not to get carried away during summer break since they're still being graded. Meanwhile, Jiro thinks about his marriage to Akari and wonders what Shiori is doing for summer break. Afterwards, checks out a live-in summer job poster he got from Kamo, who then explains that his older brother's cafe is running a pop-up shop as a summer event. When Jiro asks if he'll be taking the job, Kamo says he needs the money, so he took the job and made an application for Jiro. Hearing this, Jiro freaks out, saying he's not good at serving customers. Suddenly, Kamo says he wonders how he survived on the job as an introvert. While he freaks out, Jiro drops the flyer, and Shiori picks it up before handing it back to Jiro. On looking closer, she realizes it's the same job she and Mei applied to, since they wanted the part-time job experience. Excited, Kamo says he also applied and states that he and Jiro will work themselves to the bone. On hearing that Jiro applied for the job too, Shiori gets excited and says she has more things to look forward to. On getting home, Jiro thinks Akari is out, but to his surprise, Akari walks out of her room with her melons almost pouring out of her swimsuit. Seeing this, Jiro collapses and stutters as she approaches him. She then comments that it's hilarious that he's disorganized because of a simple swimsuit. However, Jiro stares closely at her milk cannons and concludes there's nothing simple about the swimsuit. Just then, Akari reveals that she plans to go to the beach with her friends, so she asks Jiro what he thinks about her swimsuit and adds that she bought 2 suits for the trip. While Jiro takes in the premium content with no comments, Akari calls him a man of culture. When Jiro finally finds his voice, he says the swimsuit might cause a state of emergency. At this point, Akari quickly puts on a jacket to save herself from Jiro's thirsty stare. Jiro then suggests they go with a guy to keep them safe, but Akari reveals that she's actually going for a part-time job at a cafe near the ocean. Unsurprised, Jiro says there are a lot of summer job offers going around and reveals that he got a job too. Surprised, Akari says he's not the right fit for that kind of job, but Jiro says that Kamo put him on the job. He then adds that Shiori and Mei will be there and advises Akari to start making moves on Tenjin. In response, Akari says he's taken the job to get Shiori and says it's a relief since she was worried about his feeding when she's gone. After this, she asks Jiro if he'll feel lonely when they're apart, but since he doesn't respond, Akari says he can't be lonely with Shiori nearby. Suddenly, she sits on Jiro and tells him to admit that he'll miss her, but Jiro says that the job will only last for 3 days and they'll be with their parents afterwards. Annoyed, Jiro tells her to get off him, but she refuses to budge and tells him to admit he'll be lonely without her. She then drags him and tries to crush him with her hot air balloons. So, Jiro begs her to go easy on him, and Akari suddenly leans into him, saying she's recharging. Just then, Jiro grabs her rice cakes and feels himself charging up, but Akari suddenly gets off him, saying they've gathered enough points for the next 3 days. Afterwards, Jiro asks Akari why she's still wearing her swimsuit, so she asks if he likes it, and he admits that no guy in his right senses won't. Akari then says she'll wear the other swimsuit and reserve the hot one for him alone. When Akari says he'll be seeing lots of plots at the beach, she promises to make his summer fun. Just then, Jiro checks out their job flyers and discovers they both applied to the same cafe. Some days later, they all arrive on a beach, and when they get to the lodge, Tenjin points out the boys and girls to their respective rooms. So they head inside and get excited about checking out the rooms. Afterwards, everyone tries on their uniforms and likes them, except Mei, who says it makes her feel embarrassed. However, Shiori says she looks cute, making her blush. Afterwards, they get introduced to the shop, and the manager explains that they'll split up between the kitchen and the floor. He then suggested they pair up with other employees. While Kamo thinks of getting himself a baddie on the job, Shiori approaches Jiro and asks if they could work together in the kitchen, so he agrees. Somewhere else, Tenjin shows Akari the ropes and figures she's a fast learner, while Terafune watches, distracted from teaching Sachi and Natsumi. Just then, Natsumi comments that she found something Akari would love, suddenly drawing Terafune's attention. Seeing this, Sachi calls him an idiot and says he'll never win over any girl by staring at them. Natsumi then chips in that it sucks when the girl he loves is in love with his friend. When she asks what he'll do when Akari and Tenjin start dating, Terafune says it'll never happen. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Shiori and Mei get busy cutting apples, and Mei comments that it feels good working a part-time job with her, but adds that she knows that Shiori would rather be with Jiro. So, she calls him to help them get something on a tall shelf, and leaves to give them some privacy. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Jiro asks Shiori to teach him how to put cream in cups, so she shows him how it's done, but Jiro doesn't get it right. Just then, she decides to talk him through it, but when she supports his arm with her plushies, Jiro ends up spilling his cream all over her face. Quickly, Jiro grabs a napkin, and while he tries to clean her face, Shiori gets ticklish and tells him to look into her eyes. Suddenly, they lean in for a kiss, but Shiori stops when she realizes they're being watched. Just then, Sachi and Natsumi enter the kitchen to get what they need. After this, they apologize for ruining the moment and take their leave, making Shiori and Jiro feel embarrassed. A few moments later, the ladies storm the beach in their swimsuits while Jiro and Kamo rock casual wear. On seeing Akari's other swimwear, Jiro gets fixated until Shiori and Mei show up, asking why they're not in swimsuits. In response, Kamo explains that they forgot to bring their swimsuits, but Mei accuses them of staring at dangling plots on the beach. After this, Shiru suggests that they go to a different part of the beach, but since she was pointing in the direction of a hotel, Kamo freaks out, thinking the unthinkable. Afterwards, they built sandcastles on the beach, but Kamo was focused on Mei's grapes. When Jiro gives him the stare, Kamo says the next time they'll get a chance to see women in swimsuits will be on Cornhub. Hearing this, Jiro glances at Shiori's mega melons and thanks the gods of plot. Shiori then interrupts his thoughts and suggests they make tunnels through the castle like they did when they were young. A few moments later, they play rock, paper, scissors with each other to decide who will go buy stuff. So, Akari and Jiro get picked, and on their way to the stall, they find a couple's discount ticket. When Akari suggests they use it, Jiro reminds her that they're not a couple. But Akari says they're married in a way, and adds that it's fine as long as no one finds out. At the stall, the attendant comments on how lucky Jiro is to have a cute girlfriend, but he laughs like he doesn't believe it. While they wait for their order, Akari tells Jiro to start acting like a real boyfriend. Jiro then asks how, and she tells him to put his arm around her and claim her as his. Shortly after, Jiro goes to get the order, but when he returns, he finds some guys flirting with Akari. However, when Jiro shows up, the other guys insinuate that he looks lame for a girl like her. When Jiro asks if they're Akari's friends, Akari frowns at him, while one of the guys touches Akari. Just then, Jiro tells him to let her go, since she's uncomfortable being touched like that. Thinking Jiro is trying to get her number, the boys claim Akari is too hot for a virgin boy like him. At this point, Jiro pulls Akari into his arms and says she's his wife, surprising the boys, who then apologize and wish them well. After they're gone, Jiro apologizes to Akari for not coming up with a better lie, but Akari says she's cool with being called his wife. She then tells him to quit apologizing for everything, or he'll never find a girl. Later, Shiori and Mei join the other ladies in the bath and overhear them talking about their struggles and their relationships. When the ladies ask Akari how things are going with her virgin husband, she complains that he's sloppy at home. The ladies then say that Jiro must be treating her well because he's inexperienced. Mei then interrupts them and asks if they're okay with them listening to their conversation. In response, the ladies invite Mei and Shiori to join them. Shortly after, Mei contributes to their discussion, and the ladies suddenly hug her for being spot on. Meanwhile, Shiori apologizes to Akari for having no contributions to their discussion, but Akari says it's hard to jump into such discussions without experience. Afterwards, the ladies dress up, and when Akari steps out of the bath, she finds Jiro leaving the men's bath too. When she asks him about the bath, she notices some burns on his neck and offers to put some ointment on them. Jiro then asks why she isn't returning to her room and states that they might get teased for spending so much time together. Akari then says he worries too much and asks why his neck isn't ticklish. In response, Jiro says he doesn't have any ticklish spots, so Akari tickles his belly while he worries about being found out. Suddenly, she hugs him from behind and says they haven't recharged yet for the day. When she states that they've been distant since they got to the cafe, Sachi walks in on them and finds them acting weird. After the ladies leave, Akari sends him texts, telling him to meet her somewhere and giving him a deathly glare that scares him to bits. Later that night, everyone wonders where Akari and Jiro went, but since they cannot find them, Mei asks Shiori to take a walk with her. Meanwhile, Jiro meets up with an angry-looking Akari on the beach and apologizes. This pisses Akari off as she points out that he's apologizing when he doesn't know why she's angry. When Jiro apologizes for doing that, Akari gets more pissed. However, she unzips her jacket and unveils her hot swimsuit, saying she's been looking forward to showing him. She then complains about the way Jiro acts towards her in public and adds that she hates it when he doesn't want people to see them together. In response, Jiro says he's the one ruining her reputation with his ugly face. When Akari says it doesn't matter, Jiro says people don't think as she does. Suddenly, Akari draws him closer, asking why he's saying sad things. She then tells him to look at her like he does at home. While flaunting her jiggle orbs in his face, Jiro tries to calm her down and tells her to look deep into his soul to get her message across. So, Akari says she hates it when he ignores her and talks to other girls in public. When she adds that, it makes her wonder if things will be the same when they return to the dorm. Jiro then responds by saying she sounds like a jealous girlfriend, and Akari admits that she's jealous because he acts like she's just a convenience. Suddenly, they hear Shiori and Mei approaching them, so they hide in a nearby vent hole. To make matters worse, the ladies sit on a chair nearby and start chatting. Meanwhile, in the hole, Akari slaps Jiro, telling him to move since it's too cramped in there, but Jiro blames her for dragging him into the hole. While they hide in the hole, Jiro tells Akari to endure the heat and wait a little longer. Just then, Mei hears voices and decides to check it out. However, she walks past the vent and checks somewhere else. She then apologizes to Shiori for scaring her, but Jiro's sweat droplets fall on Akari's melons, so she slaps Jiro again. But this time, the noise scares the ladies, so they run off. Akari then tells Jiro to get off her since he won't stop ogling her milky orbs even in an emergency. When she says he's like every other guy, Jiro reminds her that she wanted him to look. In response, Akari says she only said that in the heat of the moment, prompting Jiro to think she was just messing with him all along. Hearing this, Akari takes her hands off her melons and spreads her legs while telling Jiro that she's about to die of embarrassment. Suddenly, Jiro's breathing changes while Akari tells him to stop poking her with his knee, but Jiro says it's not his knee. Shocked, Akari asks if staring at her woke his sleeping dragon, but Jiro collapses before he can respond. Later, in a hospital, Jiro thanks Akari for getting people to save him, but she reminds him to stop apologizing all the time. After this, Akari crashes out on him and says he should be grateful to her for giving him free access to premium content. In addition, she says they've been married for months, so she'd like to see parts of him too. The next morning, Shiori wakes up thinking of the moment Akari returned and claims she fell asleep while stargazing on the beach. At the same time, they spot Jiro returning to the lodge and figure he was at the beach too. Later that morning, Jiro bumps into Shiori and gets charmed by her looks in her pajamas. While he envies Tenjin, Shiori encourages him to give his best in the kitchen. After they part ways, Jiro arrives at the bathroom to brush and finds Akari, who then asks why he looks down. She then asks if he's thinking of the previous night and massages his arm with her melons. Suddenly, Jiro chokes while brushing and washes his face. Before leaving, Akari says it's a secret between husband and wife and leaves the bathroom. Afterwards, Jiro asks Shiori if she'll be playing a game called Test of Courage with the others at night, but Shiori suddenly grabs him, saying she can't make it through the game because she heard voices on the beach the previous night. When she adds that she'll cause a lot of trouble for whoever she's paired with, Jiro says he hopes they're paired together since he knows she's a scaredy cat. Hearing this, Shiori thanks him and lets it slip that she loves him for his kindness. On realizing how that sounds, she tries to rephrase, but she eventually leaves out of embarrassment, making Jiro wonder if she meant something else. Just then, Kamo crept up on Jiro, scaring him to bits, and asking why he's the only one having all the fun. Surprised, Jiro asks how long he's been there, and Kamo reveals that he's been listening since he's been trying to lure Shiori out with his cultured antics. After this, Kamo tells Jiro not to let it get to his head, since Shiori only loves his personality. He then asks Jiro if he wants to be paired with Shiori and reveals that he can make it happen as the younger brother of the manager. When he explains that the pairing for the game is done by lottery, he could easily manipulate it. The next day, everyone draws their lots, and Shiori ends up pulling a sunflower lot. While she worries that she'll cause trouble for whoever ends up with her, Mei assures her that it'll be fine. Meanwhile, Mei meets up with Kamo on the beach and shows him a list of the ladies with their lot diagrams. Curious, Mei asks Kamo if he requested the list just to grant Shiori and Jiro's wishes. In response, Kamo says he only involved her in collating the list because he wants Shiori to think she ended up with Jiro as a coincidence. Hearing this, Mei commends Kamo for being a decent guy, and in turn, he commends her for being a good friend. After she takes her leave, Mei tells herself that she's just using Jiro. At the same time, Kamo thinks Mei found out his plan and flashes back to the moment Jiro requested that he pair up Akari with Tenji. Later that day, the manager announces the results of the pairing, and everyone ends up with their partner as planned by Kamo. Afterwards, while they stroll in the forest, Akari freaks out, but Tenjin holds her hand to make her feel safer. Just then, Akari finds herself comparing Tenjin's touch to Jiro's, but she quickly snaps out of it. She then checks for her phone to see how other teams are doing, but she realizes she must have dropped it somewhere. Shortly after, everyone makes it to the finish line except Tenjin and Akari, so her friends and Jiro worry about her. While Sachi says they might be somewhere fulfilling their forest fantasies, Jiro gets irritated at the thought. Just then, the manager gets a call from Tenjin, who then explains that he and Akari got separated while looking for her missing phone. While the manager tells them to return to their rooms since the area is safe, everyone returns except Jiro, who then refuses to return with Shiori. So he enters the forest and starts screaming Akari's name. Meanwhile, Akari sits somewhere, blaming herself for always depending on others, and suddenly hears a sound in the bush. She then calls out Jiro, thinking it's him, but it turns out it's Tenjin. Somewhere else, Jiro finds Akari's phone and wonders where she is. At the same time, Tenjin apologizes to Akari for abandoning her and suggests they hide from the rain. There, he asks Akari if she's fine, and she apologizes for causing so much trouble. Afterwards, Tenjin laughs at Akari for calling Jiro when he found her. While she tells him to stop laughing, Tenjin asks if she's a thing with Jiro. Akari denies this, but from the red tinge on her face, Tenji doesn't believe her, so he reveals that it makes him sad. Meanwhile, in the forest, Jiro stands in the rain, wondering where Akari is, but Shiori shows up with an umbrella and announces that Akari has been found. When she adds that Tenjin found her, Jiro looks unhappy. Shortly after, they sit to talk, and Jiro asks Shiori if she entered the forest just to tell him that, but Shiori says she was worried about him. Just then, Jiro calls himself a loser for failing to find Akari before Tenjin, but Shiori comments that he's become cooler since the start of the practical. She then adds that she envies Akari because she knows him better, surprising Jiro, who then asks what she's talking about. In response, Shiori says she hasn't met the husband side of Jiro, but Jiro clarifies that he's not in love with Akari. After this, Jiro asks Shiori if she tried out the kiss with Tenjin, but Shiori says he's the only person she ever tried it with. She then states that he's her first and asks if she was his first too, but before Jiro answers, Shiori apologizes for prying and stands to leave. However, Jiro stops her and says she'll be soaked. Suddenly, Shiori leans on his chest and says that being childhood friends won't be enough for her, so she asks Jiro to show her a part of himself that Akari doesn't know, so he kisses her. Meanwhile, Akari asks Tenjin why he's sad, and he explains that he feels like an older brother getting introduced to his little sister's boyfriend. Hearing this, Akari wonders if she's getting sister-zoned, so she asks Tenjin if he'll feel differently about her if they were paired for the marriage practical. In response, Tenjin apologizes and says he knows she's been crushing on him for a while. However, he states that he's in love with someone, and Akari asks if he's referring to Shiori, but Tenjin laughs on hearing this. He then states that it's not someone she knows. Afterwards, he says he feels bad, but is happy to know that she's got something going on with Jiro. Akari then insinuates that Jiro might be in love with someone else, so Tenjin advises her to give her best to get Jiro. Suddenly, Akari tears up, saying she's glad to have fallen in love with Tenjin. Some days later, Akari visits a temple to beg the gods to help her get Jiro and flashes back to the moment she returned to the lodge and overheard people whispering that she's back from Pound Town. Meanwhile, Shiori wonders how Jiro felt when he kissed her in the forest and worries that Jiro had kissed someone else before her. Afterwards, she concludes that Akari is Jiro's wife and she is the side chick. At the same time, Jiro thinks of his intense moment with Shiori in the forest and racks his brain to understand what that means for him and Shiori. Later, he heads to a store to buy a manga, but bumps into Shiori, who's also trying to get the same manga. Surprised, they both freak out, and Jiro asks if she reads manga. In response, Shiori says she's getting it for her younger brother. When she adds that Kenta has always wanted to meet Jiro again, Jiro is surprised that the boy remembers him. After this, Shiori tells Jiro to take the last copy of the manga, but he insists that she take it instead. Shortly after, they stand outside the door waiting for the rain to stop, and Jiro wonders what to say next. Suddenly, Shiori asks if he'd like to visit her place to talk till the rain stops, and Jiro thinks he's about to get laid, so he obliges. On getting to the dorm, Shiori heads in to make sure it's clean and returns to invite Jiro, who then thanks her for having him. Afterwards, she shows up with tea and sits beside him, while Jiro comments on the amazing aroma of her tea. Afterwards, they both read books, but Jiro was checking her out through the corner of his eye. Suddenly, Shiori catches him staring and asks if something about her looks weird. Quickly, Jiro says he's curious about what she's reading, and Shiori recommends the book. Shortly after, Shiori heads into her room. wondering if she invited Jiro over just to bore him to death. Meanwhile, Jiro wonders if Shiori hates him for being a coward. While he concludes that they need to have a chat about the kiss they had in the forest, Shiori steps out and tells Jiro to look outside. Just then, they spot double rainbows in the sky, and Shiori takes pictures of them together. When she talks about double rainbows bringing happiness, Jiro asks her to send the picture to him. After this, Jiro decides to take a bold step, but Shiori shows him a picture they all took at the beach, and Jiro gets fixated on Akari in the picture. When Shiori asks if he's about to say something, Jiro says he forgot what it was. On getting home, Jiro wonders why he gave up on his bold step and gets a text from Akari telling him she's bored. So they decided to meet at the station for a date. However, this makes Jiro freak out since they've only gone out together to increase their score. He then wonders if she's trying to empty his wallet or just mess with him. Shortly after, Jiro waits for Akari at the station, wondering if his drip looks good enough for a baddie like Akari. After waiting for a while, he decides to head home, thinking Akari stood him up, but she suddenly arrives, panting, and explains she forgot to bring her phone along. When she asks Jiro if he's angry, Jiro says he wasn't expecting her to show up since they don't hang out unless it's necessary. Just then, Akari asks him if she looks cute, but Jiro says she looks different since it's not her usual style. When Jiro says she looks nice, Akari says the outfit was just for him, so she drags him along, saying they've got a lot of places to visit. Shortly after, at a cafe, they checked out the menu and were served different flavors of ice cream. Curious, Akari asks to taste some of his, so he shares with her, and she complains that it's bitter. Just then, Akari guesses he must be thinking they just kissed indirectly and tells him to stop getting embarrassed over childish stuff. After this, they visited a cat cafe and played with the cats. After visiting a few other places, Akari shows Jiro a picture taken of them while playing with the cats, and he comments that it looks like a family picture. Hearing this, Akari suggests they get a pet cat for their marriage proposal. Just when they're about to head home, Akari says she forgot to buy a charm at the shrine and runs off, so Jiro follows her, but on the way, they run into Shiori, who's carrying some bags. When Akari reveals that they're on their way to the shrine, Shiori says she headed there to pay her respects too, and suggests they race down there. So they hand over the bags to Jiro and race towards the shrine. On getting there, they find an old lady who asks if they're fine, but the girls say they're just racing. Just then, the old lady's husband shows up, and the lady calls him Jiro, surprising the girls. Shortly after, Jiro joins them, panting, and together they pray at the shrine. Between Akari and Shiori, who perfectly matches Jiro's vibe, let's know what you think in the comments. If you like more videos like this, like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.